Chapter 21, Excerpted and Adapted, of Lyddie by Katherine Paterson. Turpitude. The morning after rescuing Bridget, Lyddie no longer felt any urge to laugh. What would be the consequence of her defending Bridget from the overseer? She tried not to think of what would happen to Bridget. She had enough to worry about with her own situation. If only I had not come back up the stairs, she thought. But no, I would not have wished to leave that poor child alone, any more than I would feed Rachel and Agnes to the bear. And yet, Bridget was not a helpless child. She might have broken loose, stomped the man's foot, or... Well, it was too late for that. Lyddie had gone back, and instead of just shouting at Mr. Marsden, she had actually attacked the man, slamming a bucket of water onto his head, then running away and laughing like a maniac. What would he do now? She allowed the tight crowd of workers to carry her up the stairs to her dreaded fate. Bridget was not at her looms. Mr. Marsden was not on his high stool. Her execution was delayed. She felt relief, which was immediately swallowed up in anxiety. She needed it all to be over. One of the girls from the acre approached her. "Bridget says to tell you she's feeling a wee bit poorly this morning. You are not to worry." The little coward. She's going to let me face it all alone, eh? When I was the one who risked all to help her. But the girl spoke again in a whisper. "The truth is, Bridget got a message telling her not to report to work this morning. She didn't want to alarm you by telling you." Now Lyddie was truly alarmed without the help of resentment toward Bridget to protect her. Would they now be punishing Bridget instead of her? Bridget had done nothing wrong, and she had a sickly mother and nearly a dozen brothers and sisters to care for. Mr. Marsden had come in. Lyddie kept her eyes carefully on her looms, while she and another girl also kept Bridget's looms working as best they could. Then a young clerk appeared at her side and asked her to come with him to the agent's office. The time had come. She shut down her own looms and one of Bridget's and followed the man to another building that held the offices. The agent, Graves, was seated at his huge desk and did not look up as the door closed behind Lyddie. You sent for me, sir?" she squeaked. The man stared at her like she was a maggot on his plate. She drew a deep breath. "I'm Lydia Worthen, sir." Her voice was stronger. "Ah, yes, Miss Worthen." He laid down a stack of papers. "I've had a distressing interview with your overseer this morning. It seems you are a troublemaker in the weaving room." "I, sir?" "Yes, Mr. Marsden fears you are having a bad influence on the other girls." "I do my work, sir," Lyddie said, gathering courage. "I have no intention of causing trouble." "How long have you been with us, Miss Worthen?" "A year, sir. Last April, sir." "And how many looms are you tending at this time?" "4, sir." "I see. And your wages, on the average?" "I make a good wage, sir. Lately it's been $3 above my board." "Are you satisfied with these wages, then?" "Yes, sir." "I see. And the hours?" "I'm used to long hours. I manage." "I see. And none of this," he waved a massive hand, "none of this 10-hour business, eh?" "I never signed a petition." "I meant to, but no need for you to know it." There was a long pause during which the agent took off his spectacles as though to see her better. "So," he said finally, "you are not one of these female reform girls?" "No, sir." There was a pause. She took a tiny step forward. "May I ask, sir, why I am being called a troublemaker?" Maybe, her heart thumped in admiration for her own boldness. "Maybe Mr. Marsden could be called, sir? How is it exactly that I have displeased him?" Her voice went up to soften the request into a question. "Yes, well," he hesitated. "Open the door." And when Lyddie obeyed, he called to the clerk to summon Mr. Marsden, then turned again to Lyddie. "You may sit down, Miss Worthen," he said, and went back to the papers on his desk. There was a clearing of the throat, and then, "You sent for me, sir?" Lyddie nearly smiled. Her exact words, not 10 minutes before. The agent spoke. "Miss Worthen here asks to know the charges against her." The overseer frowned. "This one is a troublemaker," he said evenly. Lyddie leapt from her chair. "A troublemaker? Then what be you, Mr. Marsden? What be you, eh?" "Sit down, Miss Worthen," said the agent. Mr. Marsden smirked. The agent addressed him. "In what way a troublemaker? Her work record seems satisfactory." Mr. Marsden's voice was solemn and quiet. "It is not a question of her work. I am forced, sir, to ask for her dismissal. It is a question of moral turpitude." Moral what? What was he saying? What was he accusing her of? "I see," said the agent, as though all had been explained, when nothing had. She opened her mouth. They were both looking at her sadly but sternly. In the silence, the battle had been lost. "You may ask the clerk for whatever wages are due you, Miss Worthen," the agent said, turning to his desk. What could she do? She stumbled to her feet and out the door. They paid her wages full and just, but there was no certificate of honorable discharge from the Concord Corporation, and with no certificate she would never be hired by any other corporation in Lowell. She walked out of the tall gate benumbed. She had often dreamed of this last day, but in her dream she would be going home in triumph, and now there was no triumph, and no home to go to, even in disgrace.